Welcome back. I'm Dan, and you're watching Payson's Garage. On tonight's video, I'll be working on the 87 Merkur again. I'm going to go ahead and drop the rear beam out because I want to change out the rear beam mount bushings. Then we'll reinstall the rear beam, get under there with the camera and show you guys how easy it is to do on these cars. Hook the brakes back up, and then we'll see if we have time to get the drive shaft installed. So let's get to it. Little disclaimer, I'm the type of guy when I'm out in the garage and working on my car, I like to listen to music. Unfortunately, with YouTube's copyright and royalty rules in place, I can't listen to the kind of music that I enjoy. So if you can hear something in the background, that is royalty-free streaming music I found on the internet. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to handle it. It might drive me nuts, but that's what you're hearing in the background. It's copyright-free, royalty-free music. Okay, I got the beam out of the car and I drug it over here. It got dark out, so didn't do me any good having it outside. So as I mentioned earlier, the main reason I dropped the beam out of the car is I'm going to go ahead and switch these poly bushings out. These are made by PowerFlex. Really good bushings for this car, and they offer a complete set. But I'm going to go ahead and switch over to solid aluminum. I was running a European posi diff, but I'm installing that in my 85, so I wanted to do something different in this car. So the company MC2 Racing, they're the ones that make the rear diff mount. They discovered that you can run a GM 7.5 inch differential in these. So I've got a Detroit locker in here. I would pull the stub axles out and show you the mods, but I've got retainers on them so they won't come out. But there's some minor modifications that need to be done to your axle stub shafts. And then you got to grind the case just a little bit on the side to get everything to fit inside. But it's not too difficult to do. I took my time and I ground the absolute bare minimum. I probably spent several hours grinding it and cleaning it and putting the diff, test fitting it until I finally got it slipped in there. Okay, well, let's go over, get these bushings out of here so I can get this back in the car. I'm still kind of figuring out the best way to film this stuff. So I've got a chest mount GoPro, and then I've got another camera on a tripod off to the side. So we'll see how this works out. I threw a short video up on Instagram earlier in the year of a little tool I made to pull these control arm bushings out, the stock rubber ones. And I've just discovered some pretty simple tooling. It can be made with PVC. I got some comments that some guys didn't care to use PVC, but I haven't had any problems. I haven't come across one of these bushings that's been so difficult to get out that it scared me about using PVC, that it might explode or something. What I did here is I popped the center bushing out. There's a center bushing that goes in there. So I popped that out so the bushing should be able to compress as I'm trying to push it out. But I just use a piece of all thread, a good sized washer on the top. I cut a little groove in this so it fits up alongside the beam fairly well. The main tube there, I mean. 2x4. And a couple more washers and a nut. Back it off a bit and put a little lube on it. I think I'm going to break this 2x4 in half. because I'm crouched in front of it, and of course it's on my mind now. Let's cover this up so in case this thing does decide to explode. I'm done having kids, but it doesn't mean I want to get hit in the nuts. Alright, we're going to have to go to 1/2 inch because this just doesn't have enough. This little 3, it's Milwaukee, doesn't have enough guts. Okay, let's try this again. 1/2 inch impact, and we're gonna give it all. Damn thing went in a lot easier than it's wanting to come out, that's for sure. There we go. Jeez, a lot of resistance, and it finally hit a point and just popped right out. Okay. Need to put a little oil on this all thread. I think that'll help also. Basically brand new. It's never been run. It's just been installed, mounted on the car. This is basically a spare set because I had another set that I put in my 85 already. Whoops. All right, let's move over to the other side and get that one out. Get the aluminum in here and get this damn thing back in the car. There we go. So there you go, basically a piece of all thread, piece of PVC coupling, little notch cut in it, and then I just simply use a 2x4 for my backer. Although you could use a section of steel, whatever. And then I'll tell you what, these washers have been a lifesaver. I've used these. Man, that was a lot of force though. Bent the shit out of that thing. Oh well, nothing a little hammer on the vise can't take care of. Okay, get this towel out of the way. Let me grab these aluminum bushings here. Those 2-piece. So that's basically how you do to get this back in the car. I just need to set this on top. I can lift the thing up into the car, and then this just goes in from the bottom after it's installed. The only thing I'm looking at here, I got a little booger, weld booger there from the factory. I think I'm going to try to knock that down. Let me see if there's anything on this side. No, let's see if it fits any differently over here. Yeah, I think that little weld burr was given. Yeah, that little weld burr was a problem. All right, file time.
too much like work. Okay, before I put this back in, I want to go ahead and get my axles bolted back up to the diff. It's a lot easier to do it when it's out of the car than when it's under the car. So one thing I've done during this build, I got a notebook and I'm basically writing down the torques for the different parts of the car and then mark it off when I get that particular area torqued. So these axle bolts get torqued to 38 to 43 foot-pounds. Off of here. There we go. So these are already greased, ready to go. To get them all snug, and I'll come back and just turn this thing down to 1. Oh shit, I was only running it on 2 earlier when I was trying to do those bushings. Oh shit. Okay, I forgot my gaskets. There we go. Another interesting thing about these cars, these bolts from the factory are a Torx head. Years ago, before we had the good cordless impacts, they were such a pain to get out. I was working on one of my CV axles went out. I ended up having to go buy a cutoff tool to cut the head off a couple of bolts. I just couldn't get them. I was breaking Torx bits. But now what I found out with the newer cordless impacts, I just give them a good hit with a hammer, make sure that they're cleaned out real good, tap that Torx bit in a couple times, and then hit them with the impact. And I haven't come across one I haven't been able to get out using that method. But what you can do, if you ever are doing maintenance back here, or you have an axle that's failed and you need to get those factory Torx bolts out, go ahead and throw them damn things in the trash. And there's a number of guys that supply, I mean, not that you couldn't source them yourself, but there's a number of the suppliers that have put together axle bolt kits with Allen bolts. So these are a lot better to deal with than those Torx head bolts. So the reason I like to use a little blue Loctite, and I'm adamant about torquing these, is I learned my lesson the hard way. I built an 87 XR4Ti for my daughter when she was in high school. And she called me one day from a local store. I can't remember what she was complaining of. If it was, I think it was making a real bad noise, she said. So I ran up to the store to take a look and see what was going on. And sure enough, several of the axle bolts on one side had come loose. They backed out. So it was making all kinds of rackets. So I had to jack the car up in the parking lot and tighten the axle bolts back down. So ever since that little fiasco, I make sure I torque them and I put a little blue Loctite on them. I'm gonna have to put something between the studs. I need to bring this damn stool over. I'm getting too old to be kneeling on the ground for all this shit. Let me lower this thing just a hair. There we go. Set the arms on the ground so it's a little bit more stable. This should be the last one. So one of the cool things the guys down at MC Squared Racing discovered is that these Hyperco springs, these fit in the back of the car, and these are actually a 70s Camaro front spring. And since that 70s Camaro is quite popular in dirt track racing, there are dozens and dozens of spring rates available that fit the rear of our car. And so what I've done is I replaced the upper spring isolator with some heater hose to try and get the car to sit as low as possible. That's what they recommend. So let me go ahead and slip this up onto the bump stop, and we'll keep going. Let's see, where's the spring stops? Over there. I think it's easier to slip them up on to that bump stop support rather than sit them in the cup. So I think if I can get the front end lined up, even though it's the jack's a little bit too far forward, so it's causing it to tilt. I think if I get the front aligned, I can get those in the holes they need to be in, and then I can go ahead and jack it up, and it'll lift the back up into place. So let's see what happens. There's not a whole lot of room in there. Let me grab the camera and I'll go up there and show you guys. As you can see, there's that provision on the back of the diff cover. So the diff mount bolts to that, and then the 4 bolts up in the bottom of the chassis. And with the tank there and the sway bar, I don't know if I'm going to have enough room to get those back bolts torqued. Yeah, this thing can work. I basically got to do, I basically need to set it on the jack so the rear goes up first, because then I can clear the sway bar, get it into place, and then essentially jack the front up. Oh, it must be so nice to be one of those fancy garages with a lift. I tell you what, I'm getting too old to be working under cars. Okay. Okay, that's what I did. Let's keep going. Yeah, so the trick here is all with diff placement on the jack. You get it sitting in the right place, and everything will just pop right in. There we go. Okay, the fronts are in, and looks like in the back I'm up against the top of the chassis, so I think I can put in the lower. Let's get some anti-seize, bushing. Where's my other bushing? There it is. Okay, let's get a little anti-seize up in there. Or a lot. Right, because it's aluminum against steel, even though it's painted. You know how aluminum doesn't like steel. Okay, get the plate. All right, we'll just start these just to keep the plate lined up. Okay, that looks good. Let's go over to the other side. Ah, feels good to know this is going in for the last time. Okay, then drones below. Anti-seize in the hole. Or a lot. Whatever. Okay. Let's get the plate and the bolt. These Allen bolts are a nice upgrade. I put that on, put a moron. I'm an idiot. I put it on backwards. There we go. Jeez, don't let me build your car. I'll be putting shit on backwards. Alright, so these bolts in just to keep the plate lined up. Okay, let's work on the 4 bolts for the diff mount to the bottom of the chassis. I'll tell you what, you can make life a lot easier on yourself if you do this with the tank out. Which is what I did on my 85, and it was so much easier. Okay. I got the 4 bolts in. Snug them up just a little bit, and then I'm going to move the jack a little bit and send her home and tighten everything down. Okay, so I just move the jack forward because I need to get the front of the beam up. There we go. I think that did it. I need to get the front of the beam up tight to the car so I can get those plates. I can get these plates tightened up. Show you guys what I'm up to here. Okay, this is that plate. 2 bolts that basically secure the plate. And then this is the single bolt that attaches the beam to the chassis. What I was worried about is it didn't look like this plate was going to tighten up and, you know, tighten up flush with the bottom of the chassis here, but it is. All right, let me grab a torque wrench. Okay, there's that. And the plates, the 2 bolts for the plate are 30 to 37. So how about 35? Geez, they already are. That doesn't take much, does it? All those years ago when I was trying to get the car ready for Carlisle, I had somebody commented that said, geez, you're gonna just finish the car and jump on the road and drive it? Well, yeah, absolutely. And that's the reason I keep notes and I torque everything, so I'm able to do that. So when I'm done with this thing, I wouldn't have any concern or worries about driving it cross country. Plus, that's half the adventure, isn't it? It's just like in June when my boy and I jumped in the Thunderbird and took off. I hadn't had that thing on the road in quite some time. But of course, that one bit me in the ass because the left rear brake caliper seized up. Made a wrong turn right as we were getting into Denver. Had to jump off the highway. Got off the highway, hit the brakes, and it spit the left rear brake pad out. We were in a sketchy part of town there. Had to limp it over to an O'Reilly's Auto because that was the only place I could find that could get me parts for the car. Limped it over to an O'Reilly's. They brought parts in from another store, so we sat there, I think it was about 4 hours waiting for the parts to arrive. Hotter than shit that day. So I ended up putting new pads on it and a caliper. Rotor was a little chewed up, but I wasn't worried about it right then. 35, 35. Okay, let's do that beam bolt. Then we'll go back and we'll double check plate bolts. Let's take it up to 70. Took a little extra. All right, let's go back and double check the 35 on those other ones. Let's see. Beam to frame done. Let me initial that. And beam to frame plates, initial that. Rear diff mount to chassis, 37 to 50. Another one with quite the spread. 37 to 50. Let's go 45. I don't know why they have such a range. Anybody tell me why they have such a range? Okay, 45 foot-pounds. And like I said, I'm going to have to do this through an extension. So I might have to give her a little extra kick. A reducer and an extension. Boy, this is going to be a real accurate torque, huh? Okay, got the beam back in the car. But there's still a few more things that I need to do to get this buttoned up. Sorry, I'm reaching off to the side here. First and foremost, I got to get the shocks back on. So we'll get that taken care of. And then I need to run the
I need to run the hoses, the brake hoses for the calipers, and then I also got to route the parking brake cable. And the biggest job is I switched over to these links. These actually come off of I believe a Ski-Doo snowmobiles where I found these. But there was the Ford piece, or the factory piece, looks similar. It's stamped steel with some rubber bushings in it. I wanted to get the rubber bushings out of there, and it works perfectly on the sway bar end. But I've got to come up with something. You can see there's a stud on there that the factory piece would just slip over. So I got to figure out a way to make this work. Thinking I might cut this and then drill and tap into this part here. I think that's the route I'm going to go. Or I might just weld a small plate on here and mount it to the plate. I don't know yet, but I got to get that sorted. The brakes hooked up, the shocks back in, and then the rear end will be 100% done. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. Appreciate it. Admit it, that job took a lot longer than it should have. Kind of kicked my butt trying to keep the cameras rolling, and took several hours when it probably should only take me about an hour. But I got the beam back in the car, got those bushings swapped out, so got that project done. But anyways, appreciate it. Thanks for watching. Check back, a few days hopefully, because I'm picking up a new project. I'm excited to get that home and get started on that. Plus we're rolling into winter, so I'll be getting snowmobiles out soon. I got some work to do on those. And my son, he's going to be ready to get his license soon, but I got to get some work done on his car. I got to get a suspension put in it, and probably some tie rod ends, some new tires, maybe brakes. I need to go through that thing. It needs some work before I can turn that over to him and get that on the road. So anyways, thanks for watching. Really appreciate it. I do apologize for taking so long to get another video out, but I had to pause partway through this video because I had to get my house painted. I've been putting it off for a couple of years, and it just got to the point I could not do that any longer. So I took a break to get my house painted, and then I got sick. And then after I got sick, my video editor got sick. But we're all back 100% healthy now, and we hope to get back on schedule where we're putting videos out once a week again. So again, appreciate the views. Stay tuned. We got a lot more coming. Thanks again, and remember, keep it PG.